공지 Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Homage to the blessed, noble, and perfectly enlightened one. Namo saranto sucedoye olahadi samyao samputoshe. Namo saranto sucedoye olahadi samyao samputoshe. Wu shang shen shen wei miao fa, bai qian wan jie nan zao yu. Wo jin jian wan de shou chi. Yuan Jie Ru Lai Chen Shi Yi. Together with me, the unsurpassed, deep, profound, subtle, wonderful Dharma in hundreds of thousands of millions of eons is difficult to encounter. Now that I've come to receive and hold it within my sight and hearing, I vow to fathom the thus come one's true and actual meaning. Venerable Master, Dharma friends, welcome to our Sutra lecture tonight. This is the 5th of July. We're here in Berkeley, California, and we're looking into the Flower Garland Sutra, the 5th and 6th ground. So we start is we recite the name of the sutra and the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas, and you'll find that right here on the front cover of your text. And Phil is doing something I very much approve of, which is filling in the front seats first so that we can, folks who come in later will be able to find their seats in the back. So, all right, please recite with me. Namo Da Fang Guang Fu Hua Yin Ji Hua Yin Hai Wei Bo Pu Sa Na Da Fang Guang Fu Hua Yin Ji Hua Yin Hai Wei Bo Pu Sa Na Da Fang Guang Fu Hua Yin Ji Hua Yin Hai Wei Bo Pu Sa Na Da Fang Guang Fu Hua Yin Ji Hua Yin Hai Wei Bo Pu Sa Na Da Fang Guang Fu Hua Yin Ji Hua Yin Hai Wei Bo Pu Sa Na Mu Da Fang 华严行，华严海会，佛菩萨南无大方。华严行，华严海会，佛菩萨。Welcome to everybody who's joining us online. We are webcasting tonight, and you can find, you can find this lecture later on, archived on Dharma Realm Live, the YouTube channel, DHARMA, REALM, Dharma Realm Live. So please turn in your text to 62 and 63. It's the very, very, very back of the text. 62 and 63. If anybody would like a Vietnamese translation, we have our varsity translation team upstairs in the balcony to do a simultaneous Vietnamese translation. Tonight we're going to be not as many folks as usual because our retreat, our annual retreat in the Oregon mountains starts tomorrow, and for that reason we're going to stop at 9 tonight. Usually we go to 9:30, but I'm going to stop at 9 because we have to get up very early, get all packed and hit the road. So we're going to wind up at 9. All right, now, page 62 and 63, the last stanza. Ru shi di wu li sheng di. I'll give you a line, you give it back. Ru shi di wu nan sheng di. Ru shi di wu nan sheng di. Ren zhong zui shang zhen shi dao. 我以种种方便力，为诸佛子宣说经。Okay, let's read together in unison over on the right-hand page. Here we go. Employing numerous powers of expedient skill and means, for Buddhist disciples, I have proclaimed these states of the true and actual path among people most supreme, which are those of the fifth ground, that of difficult conquest. All right. What I thought would be fun to do tonight would be to review the whole thing. We've obviously come to the end. This is the end of the fifth ground, and we're halfway through our sutra, halfway through our chapter, and the chapter is called the 10 Grounds chapter, and each ground, each stage, Sanskrit word is bhumi, which means station, stage, platform, ground. 10 grounds is kind of easy on the tongue, 10 grounds. But we don't talk about a ground very much. It's a funny translation. We talk about stages. We talk about stories in a building. And you could almost translate it as the 10 stories if you think of a 10-story building. Ground is a literal translation of di, the Chinese word di. And we adopted that early on, probably because it was easy to say, 10 grounds. But it's not an English word anybody's familiar with. 10 gardens. 10 tiers. Tiers would be good, the 10 tiers chapter. A bhumi is as much a state as it is a location. For example, if you're an intern, you're not yet an MD. You're an intern. Bill Cosby used to say, "Hey you, almost a doctor, come here," to the intern. So that's a stage, right? You're almost a doctor. It's not a place. Ground, and the dashabhumi, the 10 stages, are like that. They're not a place. It's a level of preparation. you're on the way to Buddhahood. Buddhahood would be the doctor. And the 10-stage bodhisattva is on the way to Buddhahood. So the analogy of an intern is pretty good, actually. So we're going to, when we're done with this, change grounds. If it's a digital file, it's easy. Command F, ground, stage, click, change all, bonk, and it's done. We've been using this 10 grounds since Master Hua first introduced this text to us, and it's for the sake of the convention, we've been hanging on to it. So if you say 10 grounds, people inside our translation group go, yeah, we know what that means. Anybody outside goes, that's an unfamiliar use of that word, but I'll go along with it because you guys are the Buddhists, you must know what you're talking about, right? So which is to say, it's a code word. It's not something people grasp right away. So we're at the end of the 5th, and what's been going on here? The bodhisattva, the awakened being, this person who is the hero of our text, is a hypothetical person. It's in literature you call him a protagonist. It's the hero of the story. In a movie it would be the hero. In a play it's the Chinese would say 主角. It's the main character, the lead in the play. And it's generic on purpose. The reason why our bodhisattva doesn't have a name or a birth date or a race or a bank account is because when he or she is generic, you can fit in. You the reader, me the reader. I can put myself into that person's challenges, trials, successes, failures, and go through it and embody some of those issues that the person went through and try it on. I can try on the role. How would I be if that was my face on that person's body? That's why. And it's also gender-free, mind you. This could be female, could be male. Could be Asian, could be Caucasian, could be African, could be Hispanic, could be ancient, could be modern. Any of those human definitions could fit into this generic archetype hero. So that's why it's done. So we who study this, we're now lecturing on this text so that we can imagine what did the Buddha want to say about this person, this bodhisattva. So each stage is different and they go up, they're progressive. The bodhisattva progresses along this path towards the bodhisattva classical, the classical bodhisattva. The 10 stages, the 10 grounds is the place where people go to find out what's a bodhisattva about. In all of the Buddhist literature, the Shirdipin, the 10 grounds, is the one that gives us the clearest description of the bodhisattva in every step. On our 5th step, what did he do? 如是第五难胜地, like this. Number 5, the stage that has the name called Nan Sheng, hard to beat. Difficult conquest. Tough victory. We're in the World Cup phase of this cycle. World Cups come around every, 4 years, is it? It's 4. So we're at the semifinals. We're just about almost done. And they talk about, wow, they were tough in victory, they were tough in defeat. And this is the idea that it's a conquest, it's a difficult conquest. It's hard to get there, hard to beat. On one hand, it's like, hard to beat means invincible. But it's also, when you won this, you really put in effort to win. Hard to win, nan sheng, also means they're invincible. They're really difficult to defeat. So that's the name of this stage. And it has to do with samadhi. Samadhi has to do with meditation. This is the one that talks about meditation, most of all. It corresponds to the 5th stage, the 5th of the paramitas, of which meditation is number 5. So, like this, number 5, the stage called tough victory, difficult conquest, which is, line 2, 人中最上真实道. Among people, this is the highest, true, real path. This is the genuine path. The key word there is Tao. What's Tao? Tao is a concept that our teacher, Master Hsuan, whose picture is right here, he emphasized this a lot. And if it hadn't been for his constantly pointing to it, I would have gone through my life thinking Tao was part of the Taoist religion. That's it. That it's Tao is, when we hear Tao, it means Taoist. The Tao, the Taoist. But Master Hua took the word Tao and put it in the center of 3 different religions, 3 different ways of thought in China: Taoism, Confucianism, and Buddhism. And that's one place where all 3 of these distinctly Chinese approaches to religion overlap. If you had a pie divided into 3 pieces, the Tao is the center of each piece. So what is the Tao? Well, tonight we're not going to do that because that would take us, it's worth doing, but it would take us all of the lecture and all week. We'd still be talking about it. We'd never finish it. I'll just tell you how he gave it to us. Master Hua would say, 修道的人, all you cultivators of the way. We were cultivators of the way, according to him. That was us. He was talking about us. So, what is the Tao? We would ask that. And he would say, 道也不可虚而离. The Tao is something that you can't leave for an instant. You're on it now, and you never get away from it. It's like your shadow. Shadow and the form are one. That's the Tao. You go, I don't get that, sir, but what is it? Well, by that definition, it's like it's something I should know about because it's intimate. It's intrinsic. It's inherent. It's, to have to ask it, they would say, Satchel Paige, if you have to ask, you'll never know. I guess that was Louis Armstrong. What is jazz? If you have to ask, you'll never know, said Louis Armstrong. So we should know it. And so I have come up with my own definition of what the Tao is. And my soundbite for what is the Tao is the way things are before words and thought. Reverend Heng Sure, circle R. You can rent it. I'll rent you that one. So give me credit for that one. Okay, what is it? The way things are before words and thought. How are things before words and thought? If you have to ask, you will never know. Not. The way things are before words and thought implies that there is a way that things are before words and thought. Have I ever existed before words and thought? Yeah, definitely. Children, babies, don't have language until a certain age. Are they thinking? No, they're more instinctual. Kids, hungry, need changing, they're happy. There's no thought involved. It's just spontaneous. 自然. It's natural. Close to the Tao. However, that's not the whole story. It's not just a simple precognition. If that were it, then anything that happens would be the entirety of the Tao. Master Hua would then, people would say, what is the Buddha Dharma? And he would say, 就是一个理. It's a principle. 道理 in Chinese is another word that he gave us that was so central to what we're doing. What is 道理? The Li of the Tao. Li is a picture, the character. That one? Oh, let's see. No, I have to do this. Got to do it back now. Can't do it. The Li is a picture of jade. So jade, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then there's a Li here, which is the phonetic. But it's, if you hold a piece of jade up, there are natural striations. There's patterns inside jade. The ancient Chinese considered that to be natural patterns. They come with the jade. If you drive along our nation's highways and the grinder putting a road through the mountains of Vermont, often they had to just cut right through the rock. And you look at the rock and, oh, there's all these striations in the rock, right? You see these lines and patterns and geology compressed layers of topsoil and granite and humus into, and suddenly because the road was cut, you can see the whole thing transverse, right? See the whole pattern. That's Li. Dao Li is the patterns of the Tao. So the Tao is not only just spontaneity, the way things are before words and thought, it's also the cross-section of those patterns. The Tao contains all that stuff. So it's not a simple spontaneity. It's a simple revelation of how things are before words and thought. How are things before words and thought? Really complicated, really complex. And there's more. Master Hua would say, 正道就是道. When you realize the way, when you accomplish the Tao, you are the Buddha. So what does it mean when you certify, realize, accomplish the Tao? It means something like your nature, your share of the Buddha nature merges with all of the Tao Li that is. You and principle are one. Your brain, your head, your conscious mind stops interfering. Stops messing with the way things are before words and thought. And you just merge with it. And so sages, bodhisattvas, Buddhas are people who have broken through that, or let's see, no, that's not the right word. They have healed the brokenness that takes them away from the bigger Tao Li. And they are one with the Tao. So this word suddenly gets this huge resonance, all these different ways. Tao, the way things are before words and thought. The principles of the Tao, striations in a piece of jade, right? And then you certify, you realize the Tao, and you and the Tao become one. So we are cultivators of the way. All these words suddenly just pop up as being incredibly important to what our teacher understood as what we were doing. Cultivation, this important verb that comes up all the time in our description here, 修行, this word means we are erasing the brokenness that keeps us apart from the Tao. Bit by bit by bit. Every time you bow, every time you make an offering, every time you praise, every time you repent, you are, ideally, in theory, scratching a layer off, filing down, polishing away a layer of the me and mine, the ego and its attachments that keep me from realizing the Tao. That's the theory. Okay? So we're always returning to the Tao. 凡者道之动，弱者道之用. Returning is the motion of the Tao. Softness is the function of the Tao, or gradualness. Okay? How does the Tao work? You go back to it. In other words, we've left it. 不可虚有而立也. You can't leave it for a minute, but we do. How do we leave it? We leave it because I think I'm in the middle. I think I'm broken from all of you. I think I'm separate and special somehow. And that's leaving the Tao behind. Go in the wrong direction. So, what's the motion of the Tao? Returning. Going back to that sense of connection, to that totality that runs through me, doesn't stop at my skin, that I am part of, that I can't leave for an instant. 弱者道之用. So gentleness, softness, yielding, absorbing is the function of the Tao. Okay, are we all totally confused by that? Is that like, yeah, I can't follow it. So, how? Yes, sir, Roberto. You raised both your hands. I didn't know if that was a World Cup salute. Were you like saying well done, or whether that was a question? It's both hands. I have to ask you twice. Roberto. Yeah. What's the relationship between the? Okay. What is the relationship between the Tao and the Dharma? Do the words explain it? Okay, if the Buddha did not speak the Dharma, the Tao would already exist. It's all there. By his speaking about it, he gave voice to the principles. And that's why you say, we're grateful to the Buddha for telling us about it. Now, that's capital D Dharma. There's also small d Dharma. Small d Dharma is also, you could say, the way things are. So there is a place where you could say they're the same. The Tao is the way things are before heaven and earth. The Dharma of making tea is a method. It's how. The Dharma of, fixing a transmission is knowledge. It's knowing how to move those wheels until they merge perfectly. So that's small d Dharma, method, technique, and states that are in harmony. So it's complex, but the Tao pre-exists the Dharma. The Buddha's speaking of it gives voice to the capital D Dharma. But there are dharmas, which is kind of the 10,000 things, phenomena in that case. The Tao manifests in phenomena. Okay? And if I were going to give it the full flavor, I would say anything that you can say is not the Tao. Right? That would be a Zen-y kind of way to answer you. And yet, the Tao does not deny words. So, the Tao divides into yin and yang. That's another way. So there is this, the Taoists would say, when they get going on it, they, talk about this so eloquently, that originally there is just this inchoate soup. There's the primal chaos. And this cosmology is really interesting for ancient Jewish descriptions of how things happen, of the Essene Gospels. They're early Christian explanations that say the same thing. Fundamentally, there's just this mass, a big pot of soup. And from it, originally, comes the one, which would be the first movement of desire. And as soon as there's a one, there's two. It gives birth to two. So from the zero comes a one. And the one can't be content with one. It always goes to two. So now we're into the realm of cognition. There's yin and yang, male and female, night and day. And the two gives rise to the 10,000, to all things. So there's this movement. If people, said the Tao, could be content and still and calm and pure, we could rest forever in that state of the zero, at one with all things. But as soon as the guy looks at the pretty girl, as soon as the girl looks at the handsome guy, thoughts arise. And they go, I felt something move. And the zero gives birth to one, the two, the infinite. And then all the trouble begins. So that's kind of the way the Buddhists/Taoists give us a way to see the Tao at work in humanity. But how do you get back? You know, you could say, here's another way to go at it. You could say that all of the anxiety in the world, all of the troubles, all of the blues, all of the misery in the world comes from wanting to find a way back home. That we're all sort of out here bumping around, trying to find, you know, name it, paradise, nirvana, heaven. And the Buddhist way, the Taoist way to say that would be to return the many to the one, and then returning the one back to the zero. Can that be done? Yeah, it's a process of cultivation. And the action happens in the mind. It's the way the Buddhists would say. So all of this, they say, fan zhe dao zhi dong. Returning is the motion of the Tao. We are working hard to take the many thoughts back to one thought. And if you can take one thought back to stillness, you enter samadhi, and samadhi is explained in the fifth ground. So, ren zhong zui shang zhen shi dao. Among humans, the highest, the true path, is explained in the fifth ground for doing just that, going from the many to the one, from the one to the zero. Finding our way back home after wandering forever in birth and death, they call it the long night, right? So, aren't you glad you asked that question, Roberto? If there, by golly. I won't charge you extra for that question. Good. So, for Buddhist disciples, I have proclaimed these states of the true and actual path among people, comma, the path most supreme, not people most supreme. Bad translation. Which are those of the fifth ground that are difficult conquest. Line number 3. 我以种种方便力. I have used a bunch of different ways to describe this. 为诸佛子宣说经. And now I'm done explaining it for all you Buddhist disciples. All right. That third line, which is in the translation becomes the first line, is the key to this fifth ground. What is the fifth ground about as it talks about meditation? It's not just how to meditate. It's once the bodhisattva, in her progress up this path of stages, gets to meditation, once that stillness happens, and the one is returned to the zero, and you enter samadhi, where you've erased all those lines between me and the world, thinking that I stop with my skin. You're now in a state of, in your meditation, one with the world around you and everybody else. What happens? The bodhisattva says, boy, I've made it back to quiet and still and purity, but everybody else is still out there in misery. They all have the blues. They have not found their way home. They're wandering, lost, alone and afraid in a world they don't know that they made. I've got to wake them up. I have to find a way to make them, to find a way to give them the map, to give them the GPS coordinates to get home. So I'm going to do that. How am I going to do it? The fifth stage is how he does it. Okay? That's what this chapter is about. And it's so interesting because the bodhisattva here gets a ministry. Whoa. Ministry is I'm going to sneeze here, excuse me. Try not to sneeze into the microphone. Ministry is a good Christian word. Ministers have ministries. Ministry means roughly mission, job, method for, thank you, is a calling. A ministry is a calling. What's your ministry? Oh, our ministry is missions. What's your calling? My ministry is publications. I put out a church newspaper. Do we have a ministry? We do indeed. It's translation and education. Also interfaith. Master Hua gave us those things to do. Set up monasteries and made monks and nuns. But the monks and nuns were to both cultivate and also find a way to teach people by educating and by giving the Buddha's voice to people. Translating sutras, translating the Buddha's voice. All right, what is our ministry? Education. We do schools. We publish books, we do schools. Now, what about this fifth stage in schools? That's what I wanted to review tonight. Instead of pushing ahead into number 6, you see we have our, if you turn the next page, we've got the start of the 6th ground. Just the beginning, right? I thought it would be interesting to go back, since we finished tonight, and look at what we've been talking about. Now, the entire, no, I take it back. The 5th ground starts on page 31. Let's take a look at the bodhisattva's ministry. What is he doing? And I'll give you the overview. The bodhisattva on the 5th stage enters samadhi. He learns how to meditate, masters meditation, and then starts to teach. He goes into the world and masters all the branches of learning. He becomes what's called a Renaissance person. Jack of all trades. A liberal arts graduate. Master. A humanities person who doesn't deny the sciences either. He's really well educated, but he's also the shop teacher. When I went to high school, there was a path you took, and as kids we were kind of aware of it and kind of not. But the path was, did you go to vocational school or did you go to high school? And it was known that if you went to vocational school, you took a career path. It wasn't like Taiwan. In Taiwan, you have, is it called Liankao? 是吗? Liankao. You take a test at the end of high school, right? It's the end of high school. 是吗? Is that right? Is that when it comes fully? And how you do on that test determines the absolute rest of your life. If you're what cut, 1 tiny % goes on to the best education, the best schools, Taida, Shida, Zhengda, Chengda, all these universities. But it's a tiny percentage of all the kids who test. And if you don't test in that like top, what would it be? The best school is the top 2% or, Fulian, what do you say? What percentage goes on to the best schools of all the kids in Taiwan who test? A small percent, right? Less than 5. Something like that. Goes on to the best schools. The other 95% have to figure out what they're going to do. And of course everybody wants, why? This is not Taiwan. This is Chinese culture. In Chinese culture, and Master Hua, our founder, was the last generation that took part in what was called the imperial exams. 大考试. In China, the path to success, and the one that everybody wanted, was 做官, was to be a public servant, translated as an official, a political functionary. If you tested, and you did it through testing, the tests were held at the district level, the local level, the district level, the state, meaning like the provincial, the province, and then the national. And you took a series of tests, and if you won, if you were the 状元 of the number 1, you went on to what was called the Hanlin Academy, which is the the Harvard, the Oxford, the Cambridge, the Yale, the Princeton, the Taida, the Tokyo University, the Sorbonne of China, and it was a smooth path to the highest official. And if in your family, if you had one sibling who made it as a Zhuangyuan or a Xiucai or a, what was the third? A which? Bangyan. If you made it into the, if your name was on that, that board at the end, your entire family, their fortunes changed night and day. If you had someone in your family who made it up to that top echelon, your life was made. It was comfort, it was prestige, it was renown, and it lasted for generations, right? 400 years later, people say, oh, my great-great-great-great-great-great-great grandfather was a Xiucai, was a Bangyan, it was a Zhuangyan. And so it was a big deal. The tests, the exams were big deals. And they were very rigorous, and they persisted throughout the centuries. That system continued, and it was a civil service exam that created an amazing Chinese bureaucracy, government in China. So, now in the 20th and 21st century in Taiwan and China, with all the turmoil of the 20th century, a lot of that system was disrupted. But once Taiwan stabilized, once China, it was a different story, but let's say Taiwan, it was the Liankao, the final exam, the universal exam. So that's the situation in Taiwan. When you get over to America, it was less overt, but it was really as dramatic. If you went to, what was the name of the school? Maycomber. Maycomber was the name of the high school in Toledo. They were named after civic leaders. My school was called De Vilbus. Thomas A. De Vilbus created the spark plug. We were big in the automotive industry, close to Motown, Detroit. So if you went to Maycomber, Maycomber was considered a vocational high school. When you graduated from Maycomber, you could repair a car. You could do plumbing. You were a carpenter. They were vocational high schools. You learned a trade. And what that meant was you didn't get foreign languages. Maybe you had a Spanish class, but it wasn't important. You didn't get history. A little bit, not much. Because why? It was a vocational track. You were heading out for trades. And when you think back on it, it was considered, well, you're probably not going on to college. You're a high school graduate who was qualified to do plumbing and heating. Pretty good, right? You were going to be able to make a living, and a good living. But as time progressed, everybody needed a college education. But in the 50s and 60s, when I was in school, that was the big change. Before then, if you could be a qualified plumber, man, that was a good living. Your family would be well provided for. There was esteem. You were respected because it was a trade. From the 60s to the 70s, pretty much everybody needed to go to college. And it was considered, the vocational schools were like dead end. You're not going any further. Why? Trades began to fall into less esteem. In Australia, where I have been just recently, trades are in high esteem. To be an honest working man or woman is as good as it gets. There's no sense of it being, inferior to coming out a English major after 4 years of college with nothing to do, right? Who wants to be an English major? They're a dime a dozen. You got to go on to grad school if you're going to, and then after you graduate with your MA in rhetoric, what are you going to do? Teach? Well, I don't know. You know, if you listen to Garrison Keillor on Prairie Home Companion, it's, you know, English majors need love because English majors are so, they're lonely and lost, you know. So times change. Anyway, so here is our bodhisattva who not only knows plumbing and heating, not only knows auto repair, not only can go on to civil service as a surveyor, you know, as a carpenter. This bodhisattva knows all the various arts, both Wen and Wu. He knows literature and everything that goes from using words and language, and he also can use his hands to make a living. That's the bodhisattva. And why this ministry? Why is he doing this? He's doing it because he sees that living beings are lost, confused, and suffering. Never at peace, never at home. He's going to find a way through these arts and skills and trades that he's learning to get close to them, to become friends with them, to get their trust, to, when they know his sound, he's going to speak Dharma for them and give them a path. He's going to give them the Ren Zhong Zui Sheng Zhen Shi Dao, the supreme path, the true and real path among humans. That's what he's doing. The fifth ground is all about that. We've been studying this since December, maybe? Did we start? Or maybe September, October, I think. October, November, December. So almost 6 months in this one Di Wu Di, long time. And it's all about that. The bodhisattva becomes good at worldly skills in order to teach us how to find our way back to the Tao. That's what it's about. How interesting, huh? I mean, it's real stuff. Before stages 1, 2, 3, 4, the bodhisattva was still working on his or her samadhi. The first one learned about happiness and giving. Second one learned about virtue and precepts. Third one learned about patience and endurance, being strong. The fourth one learned about vigor, how to go cultivate without retreat. But when all those fundamental skills are in place, giving, purity, patience, strength, vigor, samadhi happens, and the bodhisattva now is free to get out there and teach in a variety of ways. Yes, ma'am. Sanmei, 也叫定. Okay, her question was, what is samadhi in Chinese? There are two ways to translate it. One is when you keep the Sanskrit, you say samadhi in Sanskrit. The Chinese heard that and went sanmei. Another way is when you that's transliteration, change the sound. The other way is translated meaning, which is ding li. And what it means is you meditate until you reach a state of stillness, quiet, and purity. That's what they always talk about. And body and mind vibrate at another frequency. And things that would make you move before, you no longer move before them. Life is about something other than pursuing pleasure and running from pain. Until you get to that stage of samadhi, mostly life is, I gotta get it, because it's going to be better. But I got to keep moving because there's this thing behind me. I don't want me to get me. I got to get that, but I want to run from that. Right? Pursuing pleasure, running from pain. Mostly our days and nights are spent there. And when we're young, it's mostly pursuing pleasure. When we get old, by golly, it's running from pain. So samadhi is when you go, put on the brakes, stop. I'm not running for pleasure anymore, and I'm not running away from pain anymore. I'm quiet and still in the middle. Satisfied. Actually, everything I need is inside. Running after it outside, never going to satisfy me. So, between stage 4 and stage 5, the bodhisattva's made a lot of decisions about what life's about his fundamental goals, about buying stuff that's going to make him happy. Pretty much answered that one. He's no longer going to the mall to buy Ming Pai, name brands. And relationships have now taken a whole other importance and priority in the bodhisattva's state. What's it like in that 5th stage? You have to put in time sitting still. How do you get samadhi? How do you get that concentration? You have to stop moving. And would that it were easy. Oh, it's not easy. How do you stop moving? Sit down and try it. Boy, I taught 33 undergraduates, 20-year-old American and Aussie kids at Bond University for the last 4 months. And these included baseball players, these included surfers, students of criminology, students of advertising, students of international relations, and they're 20. Their hormones are at their peak. And most of them came into that, we did a meditation laboratory every week, a new kind of meditation. They came into that, half of them were like, I don't think I'm going to enjoy this. I don't think I like this. I don't think I want to do this. And the other ones came in, oh, this is a breeze, no big deal. It's nothing. Sure. Meditate, sure. They sat down. And it was like, okay, count your breath. All right, so 1. Let's see. Is it over? Can I, okay, yeah. Safe. Get me out of there. My mind. I don't want to go there, I can't sit still. Oh, it was, and it's predictable. And it's, I identify entirely because I've been there. What they discovered is they are moving really fast. Sitting still is hard. Hard. You don't believe me? Try it. Oh my gosh. It's like 60 miles an hour hitting the wall. We're just not used to. We can't. I read today. I saved it. They, a university, I think it was Leeds University in UK, did an experiment where they gave students a choice between receiving electrical shocks or being silent with their thoughts for 15 minutes. More than half chose the electrical shock. They would rather endure the discomfort of zzz, 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 than sit still with their mind. Because why? We're a wired generation. We gotta stop me before I check my email again, We do that. And I watch these kids, and they didn't believe it, how hard it was to meditate. They couldn't believe it, And then, because one big reason, I was sitting there doing it, and I was a credible authority, not forcing. I was just like, I kind of like this. Sat still, and they were like watching this person sit still, And I talked about it, and gave them the theories, and explained it, and well, he can do it, All right. So bit by bit by bit, and I had them keep journals of their, of course, you have to sit if you're going to write a journal. The journal doesn't write itself. It's the journal after they sit. They had to sit to write the journal, or else I would know they hadn't sat because they didn't write the journal. So I would get the journals, and, well, I went down to meditate on the beach. Didn't work very well. seagulls in the wind, noisy down there. Well, I tried meditating in my room with my roommate, but she wouldn't turn the TV off. That didn't work very well. Well, I tried meditating on the bus on the way to campus. It didn't work very well. A lot of movement, So bit by bit, they had to find a spot that was relatively not a bus, not a beach, not roommate with a TV. And about 60% didn't write the journal. 40% tried it, got to the place where after the fourth or fifth week, they said, I was quiet for 10 seconds today. It was amazing. They got 10 seconds of stillness after 4 weeks of trying. And it was whoa, okay. That little flavor was enough to keep them going. And then I would switch the method. We go from breath counting to observing the tip of the nose, and go from the tip of the nose to reciting a mantra. And the mantra could be, Lord Jesus, have mercy. A lot of these kids are Roman Catholic, and they could do a Christian mantra, that was a big deal, to be able to do something instead of Om Mani Padme Hum, for example. And then we did metta, sending out loving kindness, which was really fine. That's a contemplation. Instead of just letting it all settle, you plant the thought, may this being be well, may all beings be well. So there was that. Then all these different varieties. And we did standing meditation, and we did a sacred name, reciting a name. And after, 13 weeks of this, the ones who kept writing the journal said, I got really bad news from home. Somebody died, and the only thing that helped was meditation. That was the only place that I could be alone with my thoughts that made sense to me. Somebody else wrote, I am really stressed out by all the demands of my classes, and so I needed to meditate longer. And so, there were a handful out of 33 who tried it long enough to get the quiet. And that was very satisfying, to realize that they could do it. And I sent out an email to all of my students who were back, except for the 3 who were Aussie. There were 30 Americans over there. And I said, by the way, we are going to a summer retreat called Buddha Root Farm. Anybody ready for a week of meditation? And I didn't hear from a single student. I heard one who's down in L.A. And he said, oh man, I can't do it, but maybe next year, So everybody else was like, no, we had that experience. That was okay. But my plan is to send an email in August and say, how's it going? Anybody still meditating? So here's our bodhisattva using all these methods. And the list, there's lots of convention in the grounds, the stages. There's kind of textual themes that continue, and you page 39. Turn to page 39. Look at the second paragraph here. Disciples of the Buddha, once this bodhisattva, mahasattva, has obtained the wisdoms of such truths, he knows all conditioned dharmas as they really are, false, empty, and contrived, and that they deceive foolish, common people. The bodhisattva at that time towards all beings increases in great compassion and brings forth the light of great kindness. Through his meditation, he is now able to look at, what does it say? All conditioned dharmas. What is that? That's Roberto's question about the Tao. How is the Tao different from the Dharma? In this case, it's small d Dharma, meaning things that his senses report to him. Sounds, sights, tastes, flavors, smells, sensations of touch, and the thoughts in the mind. Those are the conditioned dharmas. What is the first one that he looks at, she looks at? His body, because he's meditating. And when you are there meditating, what happens? Your knees hurt. Once you sit still for like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, your knees hurt. Your back hurts. Your brain hurts, right? There's an ache there because you're not used to using your energy this way. You're not used to tying it together and still. And it has to forge new pathways. Your chi that flows in meridians, the same ones that the acupuncture doctor feels, that gets blocked by sitting still. And if you sit still, it connects at a certain point. Your blood circulation, your nerves, all these different systems have to reconnect. That's the meditation process. And you get used to those, and what do you discover? That the body that you thought was so real and so important is actually false, empty, and contrived. Not the best translation. What does it mean? You could say the body is a composite. They say 四大假合. It's falsely stuck together from earth, air, fire, and water. That's the way the Buddha describes the body. Who knows about that? Meditators do. Why? Meditation is a very physical experience. It's not a head trip. Meditation is not an intellectual exercise. You're there sitting still, right? Or standing in some cases. You're standing, but you're sitting still. And you have to sit there. And when you get up, you're standing up with your body. It's a very, you encounter your body in a whole new way. And what you discover as you sit still is it's made up of gas. It's made up of hard stuff, right? Bones. It's made up of flowing liquid stuff that burbles and gets hot and cold. It's made up of space, the hair pores. Sometimes your body feels like it's as big as the sky. Other times it's as tiny as an atom. And it's like not solid. It's not what you thought at all. It's not the thing in the mirror, you know. So every meditator, if you sit still long enough, goes through this process where your body starts to change. And the bodhisattva goes, whoa, in the middle of this, I've been thinking that I'm number one. I've been thinking that I'm such a loser. I've been thinking that I'm the third sister, Sanmei, Di Sangameme. Nobody listens to me. I'm unimportant. Mom really didn't love me. She loves Lao Da, you know, first child. And all these thoughts that we have totally don't pertain. They don't stick anywhere. That's all just convention, contrived, right? You put it together. You've learned that it's not true. None of those things stick, right? Who knows that? A meditator does, because you've been looking into it. You've been sitting alone with your life for minutes, hours, days, weeks, and you discover, you know, I am the child of my parents, but my parents were children of parents. Where was I with them before they were born? Whoa, you know. See, all this stuff deconstructs. That's a perfectly wonderful word for meditation. It unbuilds itself. The conditioned dharmas just start to fall apart because why? You experience their options. It's not fixed that you're a male. It's not fixed that you're old. It's a process. It's conditions, conditioned dharmas, right? Yuan Sheng Fa. Okay. And the bodhisattva, as he does that, gets free. Liberation. From all the stuff that you thought was so important, you get free. And then he goes, yeah, but everybody else thinks it's all true. Everybody else is stuck in the middle of that. And his compassion grows. And his light of kindness grows. He goes, wow, got to wake him up. Okay. So then, keeps going, and he really, really determines, there's all kinds of reading out of living beings, confusion, And compassion is alive here. And, okay, we're turning over. He decides he's going to find a way to wake him up. He gets all these names. The one whose mind is unobstructed, because he uses expedient means to travel through the world. He uses all these different methods. Okay, page 47. 47. Disciples of the Buddha, there are no worldly talents or skills which this Bodhisattva Mahasattva fails to cover or practice in order to benefit living beings. That's where it starts. There's a list from there on of all the different things this Bodhisattva masters, all the different skills and techniques and methods. And it goes down, right? Look at them. Writing, numbers, documents, cutting seals, signs, treatises, essays, earth, air, fire, water, wind, he masters. He's a doctor. He can do medicine. He can cure psychological ills, the causes of lunacy and madness, emaciation, possession by ghosts and fiends, voodoo, right? He's a witch doctor. He can do spiritual healing. He's good at calligraphy. He's a good writer. He can write music. He can dance. He can make conversation and make you laugh. He is an architect. She is a gardener. He can go into the earth and pull out all the different valuables and turn them into jewelry and decorations. He is good at astronomy. He can predict based on movements of planets in the sky, cries of birds. He is a fortune teller because he can divine dreams. And he looks at people's phrenology and their physiognomy. He can tell who their character from their outside bodies. He, now, look at this, I'm on page 49, holds precepts, enters dhyana, meaning samadhi, right? He is good at psychic powers. He, in other words, masters the Buddha's dharmas. He can do all these. And he teaches them not to trouble people, but only as they are able to understand. Okay, so there you go. Now, when I came back from Australia, we hit just on this part. And what did we point out? We just heard a listing of what are called Wu Ming Xue, the literal translation is the 5 bright sciences. In other words, 5 components of a liberal education. In India, they were called the Panchavidya. And this is what an educated person learned. We just heard 5. Shabda, which is sound, meaning literary stuff, from music to essays to calligraphy to speech to drama, everything that has to do with words and language. Sheng Ming. Okay, then next was Yi Ming, medicine. And medicine includes mental illness, and also spiritual illness. The Bodhisattva is good at all those. Okay, Yi Ming. The next one is called Nei Ming, and Nei Ming is Dharma. Everything the Buddha taught about how to get liberated. Meditation, precepts, psychic abilities, all the things that the body your nature manifests when you cultivate it. The next is called Yin Ming, and Yin Ming doesn't get enumerated here as much. It's, I guess it would be the astronomy. It's logic and debate. That was really valued in India. The ability to put your mind against other minds and put pieces together the way the universe works. So time based on observations of planets in cycles, that's Yin Ming. And the last one is actually the first one. It's called Gong Qiao Ming, arts and crafts, trades, the ability to use your hands. So, why this is so interesting to me in particular is this is a description of what in India, in the Buddhist time, how a liberal arts curriculum was built. You went to school to learn this stuff. This is what a scholar learned. Okay? In China, Confucius had Liu Yi, the 6 arts, the 6 liberal arts, the six-fold curriculum. It matches almost one for one what the Indian version of what an educated person did. Why? Because this is traditional peoples at their best. This was humanity at its best back in the axial age, back in 2,500 years ago. The Liu Yi, there's the Gu Liu Yi, there's different lists of them, but it includes music, yue, right? It includes Li, a proper educated person understood how humanity came together. Li is ritual, courtesy, propriety. Those all don't quite get it. It's how you work together with your family, with your country, with the world. So, politeness, manners, okay? That's the common, you say, good manners. That was Li. So, music, Li. Archery. What is archery? Martial arts. You learn about the body. Phys ed. Okay? Phys ed. You learn health. Yoga would be in Shu. It's archery, but not simply shooting arrows. It's everything that has to do with the body and strength and, martial arts. Then, the next one is Yu. And Yu is what? Charioteering, horseback riding, equestrian, which is your relationship to the natural world. Riding horses? Yeah, but including, raising cattle, including birds, including nature in the forest, everything that has to do with your body and the other living beings around you. Then there was Shu, mathematics. Chinese developed mathematics to an incredible degree. There's a guy named Joseph Needham who wrote a 7-volume history of science and civilization in China. It's an incredible masterwork. And he's a British scholar, an Oxford guy, or Cambridge. And he he wrote in English about Chinese science and civilization, including all of these. And mathematics in China was so intense, so well developed. Astronomy in China was the best ever, in history. And they did it without the kind of telescopes that we have. And there's one more. I've given you 5, right? The last one is Shu, is Sheng in India, Shabda, sound. In Chinese it's Shu, which means writing. Everything that has to do with words. And that would include, we call it Wenxue, right? Literary arts. Calligraphy, but essays, poetry, everything that had to do with sound. So, music, ritual, archery, equestrian, mathematics, and writing. That's the 6 arts. And they expand out to include all these different things. So you take the Wu Mingxue, the 5 sciences, you take the 6 arts, and you put them together, and it's like, wow, this is education for the human. And think if you developed, the 6 arts. With archery, you learned how to wrestle. You learned how to develop strength and overcome an opponent and give and take in physical combat and strength. With charioteering, you learned how to handle yourself with horses and nature and the natural world. With mathematics and calligraphy, you learned about, communication. With music, you learned about music developed into, the five elements. You learned about the universe, cosmology, and then with ritual, you learned about people, the world of people. That's what education should be, not simply computer science, where you educate not just manipulating financial markets, money management, right? Not simply electrical engineering. Nothing against electrical engineers, but it's like once you learn that tiny skill, but you can't deal with people, with nature, with words, with music, you don't know anything except your tiny descriptive function. You become a gear on a cog, on a wheel, among other wheels that turns in order that the clock can turn. When you learn this kind of education, you not only can read the clock and repair it, but you know the history of clocks, and you know the time that clocks are telling, and you know the cosmic context for time itself. Because why? You developed every side. So a painting is 2 dimensions, right? That's technical, specialized education. It's turn it sideways and it disappears, right? If you take a painting and you turn it on its side, it's only that thin, you can't see anything. When you develop for the whole person, the way this education is, the more you turn it, the richer it gets. There's no side that is not developed. So, I'm a great advocate of liberal education and the humanities. And this kind of education just really makes sense to me. So, that's what the 5th ground, the 5th stage is about. The bodhisattva learns all of this, hears the Dharma, and then teaches it to living beings as is appropriate, so that we can hear it and go, oh, I'd like to learn about, I'd like to learn about calligraphy. Teach me how to, I'd like to learn about guqin. There's this old stringed instrument. What does that do to my nature as I play it, I'd like to learn about marathon running. Teach me about marathons. I'd like to challenge myself. Bodhisattva goes, oh, okay, get your shoes. We'll go out and get your water bottle. We'll go run. Whatever the living being is interested in, Bodhisattva teaches it to bring them back to their nature and put it in the context of learning itself. Right? So, all in service to the Tao. And Fu Lin brought this idea forward that I mentioned 3-4 weeks ago about a Buddhist art and culture center in CTTB that was one of our teachers' wishes too. And wouldn't it be wonderful if we had a place at the city or at our Trinity campus where people could learn ceramic art, fine art, including photography and digital art, sculpture, 3D, turning clay and other materials into forms, writing. So there's, shu, poetry, plays, novels, translations of scriptures, manga, anime, right? Music, learning from musicians and singers, theater arts, drama, cookery, cuisine, kitchen, culinary arts, landscape architecture, architecture itself, gardens, martial arts, traditional Chinese cultures. Wouldn't that be wonderful? And was able to relate those skills to a bigger picture, to service for humanity. So that you could say, people are meant to do more than simply watch the World Cup and drink a lot of beer and fight with your neighbor. And if you're Argentinian, you hate the Brazilians. If you're Brazilian, you hate the Colombians. If you're Colombians, you look down on the Costa Ricans. And, So life is meant to be more than all of that. And this liberal education, I think, is the way. This is what, if we don't teach young people what are we doing as adults? So, anyway, our teacher would say, education is for the purpose of Ming Li, making bright those principles, those striations in jade, right? Education is not only for the purpose of Ming Li, name and benefit, name and profit. But boy, do we get that wrong. Yeah. Okay. Our time has come. It's 9 o'clock, and we have reviewed our fifth stage, our fifth ground, and we will be in Oregon for a week, and Jin Fosher will be here holding the fort with our Dharma friends, keeping him supplied and supported. And so next week we'll be right back here looking at the starting the sixth ground, and I'll certainly be telling you about everything that happened at Buddha Root Farm. Certainly hope all goes well so that we'll be here on time. Often we roll in about 6 o'clock. So, you know, we start very early in the morning on the highway in Ukiah, in Reedsport. But we usually do make it back, rolling down Highway 5, coming back. So we should see you here. And those of you who are joining us online, see you again next week. What does the bodhisattva do after step 5 is done? He goes into step 6. Ooh, that's what we're going to find out. And it's the wisdom stage, prajna stage. It's really different, really complex. And also, I need to say that at City of 10,000 Buddhas, there will be the Guanyin session starting next Saturday. Anybody who's interested in finding out about Guanyin Bodhisattva, at a place where they say Guanyin is at home, CTTB, please do consider doing a day or the entire week up there. It's really sublime. Our main image at CTTB is Guanyin Bodhisattva, and you get a sense of Guanyin's presence when you do that week of reciting, definitely. Okay, so that's coming up, and we're gonna dedicate the merit now, and you'll find that right here on your sheet. It's a way of sending out the goodness that comes from listening to the Dharma with wholesome friends here on a Saturday night. You send it out to the world with your mind. You use the mind like a broadcast tower, like a beacon, sending out to the world. And you make a wish, whatever that would be for you, that you would like to see happen. That's how you dedicate. So let's do that together. Here we go. Hey, every living being, our minds as one and radiant with light, share the fruits of peace with hearts of goodness, luminous and bright. If people hear and see Our hands and hearts can find it in unity. May their minds away to great compassion, wisdom, and to joy. May kindness find reward. May all who sorrow leave their grief and pain. May this boundless light break the darkness of their endless night. Because our hearts are one, this world of pain turns into paradise. May all become compassionate and wise. May all become compassionate and wise. Okay, we'll bow to the Buddhas and see you next week. Bow in respect to the Venerable Master. Nam